Good day to you. If you are looking to ship into Mexico from the US or Canada as a shipper, you have to keep in mind several things when it comes to shipping and the process involved in doing so. So, if you're shipping from Canada to the US down towards Mexico, the shipping process is as simple as this. So, first, you need to get obviously the cargo needs to ship. So you as a shipper or a person that's interested in that entire process needs to first prepare the shipping documents even before shipping. So you need to have a shipper letter of instructions. Okay. You need to have a bill of lading. You need to have a commercial invoice, and you need to have also the packing list. In addition to this, you also have to make sure that the importer in Mexico is registered as an importer of record for the specific product that is going to be exported to Mexico. And of course, you have to have a Mexican customs broker. After you've prepared the documentation and all that stuff is ready to go, then in this instance, cargo can then be transported from Canada or US to the actual border. So to the border of Mexico, right? So a carrier or a trucking company or a transportation forwarder or a transportation provider, they are in charge of transporting those goods for you as a shipper to the USA and Mexico border. So that's the next step. After that, the cargo is then inspected at Mexican customs. Okay, the cargo is put in a warehouse, and in that warehouse, it's inspected and sometimes counted or whatever the procedure would need to be to make sure that this product is legitimately processed from a customs perspective. And this is actually one of the reasons why it takes some time to ship to Mexico. A lot of people fail to understand that there is a procedure involved in this. It's not just get to the border, cross, and go deliver, and that's it. There's a procedure involved in that. Once the cargo crosses the border after the inspections have been completed and the documentations have been confirmed and customs brokers information has been filed with the border agency. After the inspection, cargo is then transported by a third-party company, for example, that delivers the cargo to the Mexican carrier. Okay, to the Mexican carrier. Once that happens, cargo is then transported from USA to the Mexican border to its final destination in Mexico. And it's delivered to the final consignee where it will be used for whatever commercial purposes they are to be used for. Whoever the company or person is that the goods or the documents are officially sent to, this is where the load itself will be transported. Okay, so there are some things to keep in mind when you're shipping as well. You got to make sure that when you're shipping freight to Mexico, since it is a little bit of a complex process, it's very important that you find a trucking company or a transportation logistics provider that has the experience in shipping freight to Mexico. Okay, and that way when they guide you through the process of shipping your freight from your location in Canada or US, it's a seamless process and it's not kind of like a guessing game as to what will happen next. Okay, it would be wise, if at all possible, that you look at potentially hiring a freight forwarder if a direct carrier that doesn't deal with Mexican shipments often is not available. So you can go after a freight forwarder, and a freight forwarder would then look at being in charge of organizing and managing, of course, the storage and the transportation of the cargo of the shipper, right? Hiring a freight forwarder, though, can definitely help you to reduce those transportation costs. Typically speaking, a freight forwarder is more competitive in terms of pricing than the ones that a carrier might offer to you as a shipper. specifically because they have such a large network of providers in Mexico, and obviously such a large provider of carriers in the US or Canada that can provide these services for you. So typically speaking, you can get a competitive price. Also, make sure that when you're choosing an importer, okay, in Mexico, it's important to make sure that it is a registered importer. So it's a registered importer for that actual product that you're shipping. And they are actually registered with the official register of importers. So I don't speak Spanish, but it's how can I say the register office, the official register office of importers. It's again, forgive me for my Spanish, but it's a Padrón de Importades and in Mexico, and this information is then used, and it ensures that that importer that's shipping those goods, that they are part of the Mexican Tax Authority Agreement, or the SAT. Okay. And once this happens, you also have to keep in mind that you have to look for a Mexican customs broker as well. And a customs broker is actually mandatory when you're shipping freight to Mexico. And Mexican customs brokers, they actually facilitate so the inspection part, the cross-docking, the paperwork, and they also follow through until it's finally cleared through customs, whatever port you decide to use, all the way from over in California to the most southern part there of Texas, respectively. And the Mexican customs broker, they have a very deep understanding of the actual importation process, and that's why it's very good to have such a partner when you're shipping things to Mexico, because I find that with Mexican shipments, if there is a document missing, maybe a box isn't checked off the right way, it could be a loss in translation with the shipper that's shipping from the US or Canada respectively, but something could be missing that could cause a larger delay at the border than you would otherwise like. Now, from Canada, when you're shipping from Canada, there actually is a list of documents that are required to actually start the transportation process. So, obviously, the list itself includes the documents that the shipper has, and the documents that the carrier also has to prepare in order to actually start that entire importation process, or the transportation process of the goods. Okay. And one of those things is the commercial invoice. And it typically is created by the shipper. And now this commercial invoice, it's a legal document between the actual supplier or shipper of the goods and the customer or consignee in Mexico. And this actually describes whatever the goods that have been bought / sold by each party respectively, and also the amount due by the customer, okay, the amount in dollars that it's due. And with this document, customs can then determine whatever amount of duties are to be paid or taxes to be paid on this information that's provided, right? There are tax agreements between the different countries. So yes, duties will vary depending on the product and all that stuff. But typically speaking, a commercial invoice should have the products that are being shipped. So the description of the products that are being shipped, the origin of the product, where it's coming from, whatever the use for this product will be should be described on that commercial invoice as well. There should also be a value of each actual unit or each actual product that's being shipped. Then when it's all added together, and that addition should show you that the total value of what's being shipped, okay? The total value of what's being shipped. Now, the number of packages should also be shown. That could come in pieces, or it could come in pallet quantification as well. And the entire thing should also come with a total weight. Okay, how much are you shipping in terms of weight? Okay, and now this is all the information that's readily available for the customs to make a sound decision as to how much duties are to be paid. And this is all just on the commercial invoice. Okay. In addition to this, there's also something called the packing list. And now the packing list, it's created by the shipper as well. And actually, the details of the specific contents of each pallet are found on the packing list. Okay, and the packing list actually helps Mexican customs, actually the Mexican customs broker, with their inspection process, right? And it makes it more seamless for them as well, right? So on a packing list, you will have information like the origin, the destination, maybe the date of the shipment and the location of the shipment as well. They will show you as well what it's shipping in terms of units. Is it a skid? Is it crate? Is it a tote? Is it just one piece of equipment? Is it is it super sacks? What is being shipped, right? And it will also show you the packing details, right? The quantity, the type of packaging that is being used. There's also a detailed description of the goods, right? For example, things about weight, how much weight is being shipped as well. And then there will also be different ways to identify the different things that are being shipped. So it could be like bolt numbers. It could be maybe if you're shipping seals, it could be seal numbers. It could be packaging numbers. It could be quantifiable data that can be used for the entire shipping process and inspection process to go smoother on that end as well. Now, in addition to, again, the commercial invoice, the packing list, there's also the bond, right? And the bond is actually provided by that international carrier that actually transports that freight from that foreign destination, like the US, for example, or Canada, or even a domestic carrier that wants to transport the imported cargo in bond from one state to another as well. Now, the bond contains some details inside that'll help with the filing of this information. So first, there is a broker filer code that's being listed on that bond as well. Now, if it's just a one-off transaction or if it's continuous transactions, that will be notified on that bond documentation as well. Now, in addition to that, there will be a date when this actual process is to be performed. There will also be any type of ID of that specific transaction by that specific bond. In addition to that, there's also a date that's applicable, and if applicable, to the actual movement of the freight. And there's also, it'll explain you any kind of liabilities involved in that shipping as well. So this bond document is actually very important when you're shipping things in bond into Mexico as well. Now, the bill of lading is the next piece up for discussion. This is actually a document that is signed by the shipper and also the carrier that's moving the freight, and also, if possible, by the consignee when they do receive the goods. Now, of course, when it is signed, it now becomes a proof of delivery or the POD document. And this actual legal document, it includes some additional information on it that'll further solidify all that data from the packing list and commercial invoice as well. Now, God willingly, it all matches up because you don't want, the bill of lading to be completely different from the packing list and the commercial invoice to be completely different from the bill of lading as well, right? So there should be details of the goods again. So the number of pallets, the description of the goods, any additional information. There should definitely be a weight on there that describes how much weight is being moved, the quantity of the goods being shipped. There should also be confirmed information about the origin of the goods and confirmed information about the destination or the final consignee location of the goods as well. Now, on this bill of lading, there will also probably be freight charge terms and any other information that's needed on there. Typically speaking, this is where that information should be found. Sometimes you'll find maybe freight charge information hidden, depending on what the payment terms are, who the customers are in that freight transaction. But it should be shown there as well. In addition to that, so we're again still talking about Canada. Don't worry about it. We'll get to the US. But in addition to this, so commercial invoice, packing list, the bond, the bill of lading, there also needs to be a letter of instructions, okay? And this letter of instruction, it's a document that needs to be provided by the freight forwarder that's setting this shipment up and also filled out by the shipper as well. Now, this document also shows and defines, what the freight forwarder has to do in terms of how and where they need to handle the export of the shipment. So it'll show information like shipper's information, like origin. It'll show the customs broker information. It'll also show the consignee's information, or the final destination of delivery. It'll also show the merchandise description. Okay, so like what is being shipped, the weight, the number of skids, pallets, crates, totes, etc. The type of equipment that's being shipped as well, if it is just a piece of equipment. It might also have a pickup number on there as well, and then it'll also give you billing information, right? And any other additional information that are needed for that entire process for that freight forwarder as well to be crystal clear as well. Okay, so this is shipping from Canada, to Mexico. Okay, that's the process involved in terms of the documentation that's needed. Okay, now for the U.S. There's a few changes in terms of what is needed. So for the U.S., you do need a bill of lading. Okay. Now, a bill of lading, again, is what we talked about, right? The origin of the goods, the destination, freight charge terms, the description of the goods, how many pallets, etc. Okay. You also do need the letter of instructions. Okay. Just like we discussed, you need the shipper's information, description of the freight, consignee information, billing information, any other information needed for the freight forwarder as well. Okay. If you're doing from the U.S. To Mexico as well. Now, there's some additional things. So the border between the U.S. and Mexico is actually one of the most busy borders in the world, both from a commercial perspective and, of course, a personal conveyance perspective as well. Now, it is a geopolitical position, but the type of goods transported, okay, and that the cross-border control make that transportation of actual finished goods or components a little bit of a complex process. Okay, so shippers typically like to hire freight forwarders that know what they're doing in the border crossing when dealing with Mexico, to make sure that their cargo can make it to the final destination in Mexico on time. In addition to the bill of lading and the letter of instructions, you do need to have a DODA. So the DODA, the DODA, it's actually a document that's needed, and it's a new document that's needed for customs clearance purposes. Okay, and it's actually been effective since 2018, early 2018. And it actually replaces the need for other customs documents. Okay, for example, the pedimento as an example, and it is generated through the Mexican customs portal or through the designated customs brokers web portal as well, or web service as well. Okay, and it is generated based on the information of the pedimentos, okay, that are then validated and paid, and it contains a 2D code, QR code, okay, quick response code, and an electronic signature of the customs agent, and the digital seal of the tax administration service, or the SAT, okay? And companies will have the customs broker or legal representatives as such prepare that DODA, that DODA for them. And then this will be printed and handed actually to the freight forwarder, who will then present it, okay? They will present it along with the merchandise as well before the customs inspection, the Mexican customs inspection as well. So the customs and section information, the customs office information should be listed on there. There should be a CAT code, a CAAT number, a carrier alphanumeric code shown there, kind of like the SCAC code in the US. There should be a transport identification number, like the license plates of the vehicle that the freight is moving on. There should also be information about the pedimentos that are then, like I said, electronically validated. Okay. Now, in addition to the DODA, you also need the cargo manifest. And that is a document actually prepared by a licensed U.S. customs broker. So not only do you need a Mexican customs broker, you also need a US customs broker, okay? And the manifest actually gives the commercial details of the goods, right? So it'll talk about the shipper name, address, consignee name, address, bill of lading number, any additional markings or details, numbers that are needed. Also, the type of packaging, the number of packages, any description of the goods. It'll have the weight listed as well. It'll also have the freight charge details or freight details associated with that on that cargo manifest as well. In addition to this, there also needs to be a canceled bond document, okay? And the bond is sent to the customs broker to be canceled at this time. And once the bond has then been canceled, the trailer is then transported to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. Okay, so until you have that cancellation document, it's not recommended that you try to cross when you're dealing with the bonded shipping as well. Okay. Now, there's also a list of documents that are required for the transportation of the goods inside of Mexico as well, right? So there's something called the carta porte, and it's a legal document, okay? It's a legal document that shows that there's an existence of a contract between the shipper and the carrier to move this freight, and it's actually issued by the carrier, and it informs also about all the different terms in terms of that agreement as well. Right? So that carta porte should include things like carrier's information, shipper's information, truck plate, trailer plate, value of the goods, payment terms and conditions, description of the goods as an example. And this all needs to be available for that transportation of those goods as well. Now, once this freight, it's essentially a bill of lading. Essentially, that's what the carta porte is, okay? That bill of lading then, or the carta porte, it's then used to be signed off once the goods have been received by the final destination, okay? And that proof of delivery is then kind of like confirmation that the consignee has confirmed they have received the load, okay? And that proof of delivery then shows that that actual cargo was shipped to that final location as stated. If for whatever reason that freight is damaged, or destroyed, or there's missing pallets or pieces when it's delivered, the consignee then would have to mention in that proof of delivery that something is missing. For example, they needed to receive 26 pallets. They received 22. They would note they would put a stamp, and then they would put number of pallets received 22, number of pallets missing 4, for example, right? So that's how that would look on that end as well. Now you have to keep in mind also when you're shipping into Mexico, you have to keep the border in mind for calculating the transit time for any kind of for whatever responsible party there is for the shipping of the goods as well. So typically, if you're a good freight broker or a good freight forwarder that can assist in this process, you should definitely be considering first where that freight is coming from, how many miles that per day that truck can go. Anywhere, if it's picking up in Canada or US, typically speaking, between 500 and 600 miles should be your kind of go-to calculation per day, how much that freight can move. Okay. And that's just to the border. Okay. Once it accesses the border, so arrives at whatever border city that it will be arriving at, I like to put 2 days, and that's generally what it should be considered when crossing the Mexican borders. Because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're telling a shipper something that's unreasonable. If you say, yeah, this is going to cross as soon as it gets there, that's not reasonable. Don't do that. I always say, always under promise and over deliver rather than over promise and under deliver, because it'll come back to haunt you, right? And you got to keep in mind the HOS rules, right? Hours of service rules in all 3 countries as well. Okay, in Canada, there's a maximum driving time of about 13 hours per day, or per shift, in other words. Okay, and if you're to drive again, like between those shifts, that driver that you're using, if it's a single driver, has to do off-duty cycle for 8 consecutive hours in Canada, okay? In the US, there's a maximum driving time of 11 hours, okay? And after those 11 hours, a driver has to sleep for 10 hours, okay? There's also a 30-minute break that should be included in there within every 8-hour driving window. Now, do drivers take it? Some do, some yes. But it's in there. It's in the HOS rules. And there's also the Mexican side as well, right? There's a maximum driving time of 14 hours, right? After those 14 hours, they have to take a break for 8 hours, okay? And also, yes, in Mexico, drivers should be taking a break of 30 minutes every 5 hours. But do they do it or not? That's another story for another day as well, okay? Now, if you're shipping freight to Mexico on a dry van, doesn't matter, less than truckload, full truckload. You can take this on a 48 or 53 foot dry van trailer. Typically speaking, the maximum amount of product that you can move is up to 44,000 pounds. You'll find that some carriers have their own maximums as well, like 42,500 as an example. Just depending on their trailers and stuff. It is an option for you to ship if you have dry freight to move. Typically speaking, pretty decent transit times on dry vans. If you're doing up to the maximum 44,000 pounds, you would have the dedicated truck just for you as the customer. And typically speaking, for that dedicated exclusive use, it has to be 10 or more pallets. Just from that perspective. If you're doing LTL, again, it'll be pool distribution all the way down to the final delivery location. So yes, it's more affordable. It's cheaper because you're only, renting 1 to 6, let's say, pallet positions that are stackable, or 1 to 3 pallets that are non-stackable if it's just LTL shipping. And typically speaking, it's a maximum of 10,000 pounds of product that's being shipped if you're going to go down the LTL route. And also the linear foot rule and linear space, right? So it's roughly speaking 12 feet of linear space that you're shipping down to Mexico as well. Now, if you're going to go down the temperature sensitive route and ship on a reefer, reefers ship to Mexico as well. They can ship things like fruits and meat and seafood and fish and vegetables and dairy and pharmaceuticals and flowers and plants, etc. Okay. Now, yes, they also can have short transit times. Typically speaking, maximum also is around 44,000 pounds. And the temperature range is anywhere from minus 40 Celsius to plus 40 Celsius on these on the reefers as well. There are customers that also ship flatbed to Mexico as well. And flatbed shipping, they can be used for, construction material shipping, pipes, wood, steel tanks, maybe like airplane parts, even machinery, bricks, molds, things of that nature. And this is a typically maximum weight around 48,000 pounds on a flatbed. But there's many different types of flatbeds. You have your regular flatbeds and you have your double drops and step decks. Different varying dimensions that can be used, okay? And the cool thing about flatbeds, of course, is you can load and offload things from the top or side of the truck as well, respectively. Now, how much would it cost to ship freight from Mexico, to Mexico from Canada or the U.S.? Now, it all depends on the origin, of course, and the destination and the type of trailer that's needed and the type of service as well. If you need a full truckload or less than truckload, it also depends on the weight and the number of pallets and the dimensions and the type of product even. That could all be very much used to determine what that freight cost will be to ship to Mexico from U.S. or Canada, respectively, okay? Now, I told you in the beginning of this Mexican guide is to really consider looking at freight brokers or freight forwarders to kind of make your pricing more competitive, to save some money. But companies that try to hire freight forwarders to take responsibility of their freight and to transport the needs of their freight needs is a very much in the growing phase when it comes to Mexican shipping. Now we're looking at probably about a 10% growth year over year when it comes to freight forwarders and freight brokers taking shippers freight from U.S. and Canada down to Mexico year over year. That should be about the growing rate. Again, freight forwarders, when it comes to pricing, will also consider your volume that you're more or less promising to them as shippers. They will also look at even cargo consolidation for you if that is an option. Okay, if they're very good at shipping to Mexico and they have a good connections, they will get you very much favorable consolidated pricing. So let's say you have 1 to 3 pallets to move, they will consolidate that freight and get it to the final destination for a less amount of money. Okay, for less amount of money than otherwise would be compared to as well. So there you have it. That's that kind of Mexican guide to shipping. If you do have further questions in regards to the Mexican side of logistics from Canada to the US, feel free to reach out to me. I've done, I can't say a million of these loads, but I've done thousands of loads to Mexico and thousands of loads from Mexico to US and Canada. So if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to me. Otherwise, please like, share, and comment on this video if you found it helpful, or if not, please also share your constructive criticism as well back, because I do want to grow this channel into something that would be of use. So yes, please reach out and we'll go from there. So thanks again for listening, and cheers. Happy shipping.